นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ The last week, returning from Bangkok, I came by way of Korat, where I'd been invited to give a talk at a big government hospital, which has had a lot of problems with corruption and staff difficulties, and left Bangkok in the early morning and arrived in Korat around 9 in the morning, and we weren't quite sure of the way into the hospital, and so we stopped and asked the way, and a couple of car park attendants came and gave us very detailed instructions of how to get in, take the right entrance into the hospital, and we followed their instructions. Now, you might think that that's an extremely mundane kind of event, and it was, in a way. But for myself, just sitting there, having been sitting quietly in the car, just reflecting on various points of Dhamma for the last hour or two, I had a great amount of this piti arising from this simple event, and looking at it, why would that be? You see that it was just for me a classic or a perfect or beautiful example of the inherent goodness or the potential of goodness in a human being. Here was somebody who had absolutely no personal benefit at all in view, nothing at all to be gained, either materially or any other way, from giving us a time to give this detailed information. It was a totally spontaneous act of giving, with absolutely nothing hoped for in return. The sole Jayatana of that person, those two men, was to be helpful to someone that they'd never seen before in their life and would never see again. And it wasn't just because there was a monk in the front seat. There was just a genuine goodness. And I thought, that was just so wonderful to me to see that. That there is evidence of this potential capacity for goodness and disinterested action on behalf of others, altruism, in fact, all around us, except it's perhaps too close for us to see, or too obvious, or too prosaic, too mundane, too ordinary. But what we notice as monks, as samanas, as meditators, is that as the mind calms down, we enter different realms. We're in different worlds, different bhavas, than people who don't reflect on life. The things that you notice, the things that interest you, the things that you pick up and reflect on or think about are quite different. your whole focus is quite different. Now I can tell you this small anecdote, and probably all of you can sympathize with that quite easily. But for someone who's not practicing, it would probably sound quite ridiculous that someone could be filled with a strong emotion, religious emotion, after being told the way to into a nearby hospital. So the realm we live in, the world we live in, is very much conditioned by the Dhammas in our minds. We are co-creators of the world. It would be going too far to say that the world is a dream and that we're creating it out of our own minds. But it would also be going too far in the other direction to give the world, the external world, as we call it, too much reality, to consider it as something solid, there, which imposes upon us in various kinds of ways. There is this very subtle co-production responsible for our experience, and the penetration of that is certainly a very important part of our practice. I come back to this kind of reflection quite often because it was very much my initial inspiration and enthusiasm for Buddhism. The still a very clear memory for me as a 15-year-old, I think, or 16, I can't remember now, coming across a Buddhist book in a bookstore in Cambridge in England, and for the first time clearly put in a very articulate way the proposal or the idea, the truth that defilement are not inherent in the mind, that they enter the mind from outside, as it were, that they arise and pass away according to conditions. They are not the mind, they don't belong to the mind, they're not intrinsic properties of the mind, and that they can be transcended. That, I think, would be the most important piece of information that I've ever got from a book. And I've never been able to get into this sort of anti-book movement because they're a Kalyana Mitta, and I have a great deal of gratitude for things I've got from books, growing up in a non-Buddhist culture. I don't know where I would have got that information from. I really don't know that any of my teachers or any of my elders certainly were aware of that. So when we talk about practice, either to ourselves or with others, we tend to emphasize defilements and the nitty-gritty, the things that we're working with day by day. But that has to be seen against a backdrop of this great insight of the Buddhas, that these things can be transcended, should be transcended, In fact, if you really appreciate the truth of that statement, there really seems very little else that you can do. For me, suddenly it was like a lot of things had been very obscure, and dim, and unsure in my life. So were suddenly clarified or crystallized. I could see. At that time, I hadn't yet any real thoughts of becoming a monk, or even aware that it was possible to become a Buddhist monk. But I did see that whatever I was going to do in my life, it would have to be in accordance with this insight. That is to say, it would have to be based upon the abandonment of defilement and the realization of that state beyond it. Well, that seemed to me that was the process of authenticizing one's life, coming to a real peace and wisdom in life, was dependent upon this practice. And I've never wavered in that belief ever since. But as I say, it is easy for that to be overshadowed, and for us to forget that the most important or fundamental distinguishing characteristic of this teaching is that we believe in the capacity of a human being to transcend suffering and transcend defilement. We don't believe that it is necessary to have to propitiate any spirits, to pray to any god, to perform any special kind of ceremonies and rituals, but that we have this inherent capacity to go beyond, to free ourselves, and we feel more and more that it's incumbent upon us to realize that potential. In fact, that we can't really feel happy or comfortable or true to ourselves if we don't bend our every action towards that. So I feel this is an important point to come back to again and again, and sometimes those points which seem very obvious, cliches even, are often the most powerful and the most have the most transforming effect on our minds. One of the obstacles in practice is we reach that arum, that state of jadedness, of boredom with a particular reflection or a particular truth, and just leave it aside for the time being. Whereas to really realize Dhamma, we have to keep bearing in, we have to keep penetrating, we have to let those things really soak into us so they affect our whole way of perceiving and relating to our own five khandhas of other people, the world around us. This truth of our inherent capacity, ability to transcend, and the inherent capacity, ability of all those around us to transcend. If we bring our mind to it, incline our mind towards that truth, there's a very ennobling effect. And it puts defilements into perspective. Sometimes we can create paper tigers out of defilements. We can make them into something far more than they are. If we're working with the defilements, struggling with the defilements, perhaps losing out to the defilements far more than we seem to have victory over them, then they often seem to acquire a significance, a reality, which is quite overpowering or intimidating and discouraging. And defilement for many of us becomes to seem far more real than wholesome Dhammas. And we can perhaps start taking a cynical view that the wholesome Dhammas we see are some kind of fake, a kind of facade, which is flimsily trying to disguise the real me. Notice how the defilements seem far closer to us, and then far more part of who I am than wholesome Dhammas. Is that true? Well, in fact, the Dhammas are all of exactly the same value. They arise, they stay a while, and then they pass away. There's not anything that's more real or more you than anything else. And there are just things that we identify with more strongly. And the way through that, of course, is keeping our eyes and ears open and maintaining that steady awareness of what's going on in the body, feelings, citta, mind, and mind objects. It's a basic satipatthana practice. And although satipatthana practice doesn't require us to go step by step, you have to develop mindfulness of body first before mindfulness of feelings and so on in that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But having said that, the mindfulness of the body is really fundamental and helps to establish the mindfulness of the Vedana, Citta and Dhamma very, very well. And the mind being that much coarser is easier to be aware of. And this understanding is very much part of our the rationale, or the reason behind the way that we do things here, in terms of how we giving attention to how we walk, how we sit, how we stand, our posture, the wearing of the robes, the handling of the bowl, walking up, every kind of physical action. We're trying to bring up precision and a refinement to it, not to because we want to be some kind of perfect monk, and to be sort of create this sort of graceful persona, but because the more precise you are and the more centered you are in the body, the more you reveal, clarify the various mental states. If you're not aware of the body, then it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to maintain awareness of the mind. When the mind is caught up in some thought, mood, emotion, then as a consequence, sloppy, careless kind of physical behavior tends to manifest. So that's a sign, of the where the mind is at, and both as we can work, we're working inwards, from the inwards outwards, and from the outside inwards. Then one way of dealing with that is consciously putting effort into the physical body and the change of postures, movements of the body. Notice how there is this tendency for us to become rather perfunctory in our dealings with the physical world, as putting on our robes, getting onto the asana, bowing, picking our bowl up to go bindabat, carrying the bowl, taking the cover off the bowl when you get back, putting the lid back on the bowl. All these kind of things, if you can give some kind of sense of respect and significance to these kind of details, more than any other technique, it just grounds you right there with what you're doing, with what's happening right now, and being able to see, to experience change, not thinking about it, not speculating, philosophizing about change, but experiencing it as the very stuff of our life. And the more we can focus on change, the nature of change, then the wiser we become. If there's any, the essence of wisdom is really this insight into change and the conditioned nature of phenomena, including our body and mind, and the one who's aware of change is seeing this flowing nature. And as you look and you watch and you observe, information is being accumulated without you having actually to think about things. You notice that change can be of various kinds. Change can be very slow and gradual. Change can be quite quick. Change can be very sudden. Change can be positive. It can be negative. Positive changes can have certain negative implications, ramifications. Negative changes can have positive ramifications, and those positive ramifications can have further negative ramifications until you're not quite sure when you see a whole flow of phenomena whether you can really distinguish something as being positive and something as being negative, as the positive things that you value seem to be inseparable from the negative things that preceded them, and vice versa. But experiencing, making conscious the nature of change through stabilizing the mind in the present moment, particularly using Korwat and the various ways of doing things that we have as monks and novices, bringing attention to posture, physical movements, tension, strains, so on in the physical body. And remember always with the proviso that we're not allowing the mind to become satisfied or dissatisfied, allowing covetousness or grief to arise. This is the important precondition for sati, for satipatthana. As soon as there's this delight in some phenomena, or there's a moving away with aversion, dislike, then sati is lost. The sati sampajanya atapi, which is effort, requires this absence of covetousness and grief. So the seeing, the knowing of something is distorted by emotional reactions to the object. And so the knowing and the emotional reaction affect each other. If we want to maintain this clear knowing of something as it is, we have to protect the mind from this indulgence in liking and indulgence in dislike. And the ability to do that, where does that come from? Most importantly, from samadhi. Samadhi is what gives you a refuge. It gives you your vihara, and your vihara Dhamma, a place where you can dwell. And when you have a place that you can dwell, which is comfortable and cool and pleasant, then it's going to take quite a lot to pull you out of that and to interest you enough to take on the agitation and the tiredness that comes from liking things and disliking them and trying to make them yours or trying to escape from them. You just find that tiresome. And you've got something better. But if you don't have something better, you can't help it. It's like an addiction. You know it's bad for you. You know it's killing you a little bit, but you can't help it because you don't have anything else. And samadhi is the something else. Samadhi is that which gives you. That's your stabilizer. That's what makes the mind firm and strong, where it can resist this conditioned habitual tendency to want to just get involved in everything and get caught up in things time again. You can't just very hard for you just to decide not to do that anymore because you see that it's harmful. That's the panya aspect. But there has to be the samadhi aspect, which is the firmness and integrity of mind, and to carry out, to implement the insight that wisdom's providing us. Now through that equanimity, which is rising from samadhi, that's purifying mindfulness. Equanimity purifies mindfulness. So begin to see, experience, just rising and falling, changing, and the different kinds of change. And that has a bearing on how you live your life. You begin to see the fallacy of seeking security through control. That finding change, if you don't see that, you don't understand change, you're inevitably going to find change threatening, and that you're going to be trying consciously or unconsciously to somehow control or manipulate change so that it takes place in a way which is agreeable to you, and to be offended and made angry and fearful when the rate of change or the kind of changes are unexpected. To feel if you're banking for your security on being able to keep the changes in your life in a certain frame, a certain boundary, and then when they get out of that frame, which often they do, then you're going to really start to panic. But if you just can put that down, and you're going to see change as change, and the way things are, the stuff of life is change, and being willing to go along with that. There's a nice simile. I think Joseph Goldstein came up with his It's talking about parachuting, jumping from a plane and then realizing you don't have a parachute and panicking. And then after a certain when you begin to really see that there is no controller, you're not controlling. It's not just that you've got to try to stop controlling things. That's your task, that's your project, to be a self that doesn't control things. But to see there's never been any control right from the start. There's never been a controller. That's like when you realize you haven't got a parachute. But if you can just stay with that, and then you have to draw on these reserves of endurance and patience, which you've been developing in some mundane activities of your daily life, as well as in formal meditation. This is what you call barami. These are the reserves that carry you through. So when you get to that point of panic, you haven't got a parachute. Being able just to stay with that enough, and then until this is a wonderful realization that there's no ground. You're falling, but there's no ground. You're not controlling. You can't control, but you don't have to control. So another cliche or perhaps truism, obviously, that we have to come back to this sense that the teachings are truths. They're not theories. They're not something that the Buddha created. And the Dhamma isn't something that arose with the Buddha. And the Buddha is very clear about this. The Dhamma is something which the Buddha discovered and revealed, made clear. It's like an old overgrown path which he discovered to an ancient city, pointed out to the other people. So it was cleared, this path. But that path had existed since ancient times. And the Buddha said, even if the Tathagata had not arisen in the world, still things would be impermanent, unstable, lacking any essence, lacking self. And that those truths are not dependent on the Buddha's enlightenment. They're just the way things are. So we talk about attaining nibbana and so on, but the actual Pali idiom is Satchikiriya, is it's clarifying nibbana. So, it's making clear something that's there already, if you like, but it's making it's opening up to what's already here, which is change, instability, the conditioned nature of phenomena, the lack of self. So it's not like we're always moving onwards to seek and to search and to find something more and more, but it's more we're seeking to reveal to part the veils which are concealing that which is most ordinary. The most marvelous and wonderful thing is just the clear-sighted awareness of what is the most ordinary. So we don't have to be looking outside of ourselves, but through purifying the knower, this Buddha within, the knowing, the one who knows, the awakened one, by development of sila, samadhi, panya, and being able to dwell in this non-distracted state in the present, putting down this habitual tendency to want something, anything at all, going on. Even if it's painful, even if it's frustrating, and so it's just something, anything. And that's one of the major obstacles. This is like bhavatanha, isn't it? Just wanting to grasp it, just like the man in the sea, just grasp any plank, anything just floating in the water to keep him above the water just for a little bit longer. And we're like that sort of drowning man, grasping at any bit of flotsam and jetsam that's floating on the surface of the water. We don't have to do that. Because when you see, when you are brave enough, when you have the faith, confidence in the Buddha's teachings to refrain from that, and are willing just to be non-distracted. You don't need anything. Just to be with the body and the feelings, the mind, mental states, and learning from them. They're teaching you all the time. The 5 khandhas, the 6 ayatana, however you want, which particular focus that you want. They're your ajahns, wherever you are. Ajahn Jayasaro relates this story of going and staying in a branch monastery when he was just newly ordained, and feeling rather homesick for Wat Pah Pong and missing Luang Por very much. And the monastery he was at, he didn't find the ajahn very inspiring, and it wasn't very much teaching going on, and he felt that things weren't going very well, and he was sick, he had diarrhea, and then suddenly, without any forewarning, Luang Por visited the monastery. He was overjoyed and went to pay his respects and told Luang Por how wonderful it was that Luang Por had come, and that he missed him a lot, he was being so far away, and that he didn't really feel he had a teacher where he was staying. And Luang Por said, "What do you mean you don't have any teachers? You've got 6 teachers." And he said, "Ajahn Jayasaro didn't. You've always got those teachers with you." So, allowing those things to teach us, to show us, they just show us what they are. They manifest anicca, they manifest dukkha, they manifest anatta. And these are not abstruse kind of doctrines that you need to study for many years. I mean, the great teachers in our tradition, from Ajahn Chah, Luang Pu Man, Luang Pu Khao, Luang Pu Wan, all those great masters had next to no formal education. They weren't great intellectuals, but they had the willingness, the ability, the gumption, the grit, just to stick with it and look, what is this? This is my life. What is it? And I stop thinking about it, speculating about it, and just get down to it. What is this? What is this body? What is this mind? What is change? So the 3 characteristics are different aspects of the same thing. They're not separate. And change is the clearest and the most obvious. And Luang Por and most of the forest monks would had an affinity for this contemplation of change. And we see the contemplation of change is what undermines very deeply and fundamentally, this whole sense of being somebody, which your whole sense of being somebody, doing something, having experiences in the world, is based on ignoring the truth of impermanence. We're always shutting something out when there's tanha in the mind. Avichara is not just not knowing, but it's ignoring. It's not letting things in. It's filtering. So I'd like to encourage all of you to develop this way of this goal of non-distracted dwelling in the present with our teachers, as the eyes and forms, ears and sounds, nose and odors, the tongue, taste, the body, the tangible object, the mind, its thoughts and ideas and memories and imagination, dwelling without covetousness and grief, mindfulness, clear comprehension, effort. It's a steady, cool, continual kind of effort. That kind of effort that you can just keep putting in all the time. If you see sometimes, well, those of you who've been in sarkas or going to sarkas, when you have work projects, or if you see digging, for instance, you see a Farang novice and a Thai novice hoeing. You just see the Thais who've been brought up on the farms, just this unhurried, sort of fluid kind of digging with the hoe, and just keep coming in over and over and over again, and they don't seem to put very much effort into it, but they, it's just right there. The hoe goes right in, and they pull the earth away. And there's a beauty about it, and there's an effort which has that sort of quintessential quality of unhurriedness and grace. Whereas all of us, and me myself, you sort of go at it, sort of hell for leather for a few times, and then get covered in sweat and exhausted, and busy blisters all over our hand, and usually almost cut off one or more of our toes. But that's a good example, I've found, of that kind of effort. Yes, it's not sort of effort. Putting a lot of effort in doesn't mean sort of gritting your teeth and getting down and doing, because you can't maintain that for very long. But this steady, fluid kind of effort, which is not discouraged, not distracted, but it's just wearing away like the water of a stream wearing away a stone, or if that takes a bit too long, then I can't think of another simile right now, but something which is maybe a rat gnawing through a piece of string or something like that. Just a sense of continual, steady effort. Doesn't have to be too spectacular, because you can't usually maintain that for very long, and you tend to go to the opposite extreme. But an effort which is accumulating power all the time, not dissipating that effort through indulgence in sensuality, indulgence in conversation. That don't let the energy and the power of your meditation fritter away unnecessarily. It's so easy to do that. And look after it, maintain it, be aware of the things which threaten it, which lessen it, and try and keep away from those things. Sometimes it may just be necessary to avoid certain things. You just humbly avoid them if you're not ready for those kind of things yet. So maintain the spirit of your ordination, the spirit of your renunciation, and make that bear very directly on your everyday life. Sometimes because we have a high ideal, and for us as monks we have the highest ideal, that of Nibbana, and we're enthused with that, then somehow we can do things which say things, practice in ways which are often completely at odds with that. And ironically, our justification to ourselves is, well, because our basic underlying aim is Nibbana, then it doesn't matter that we're not following the path towards Nibbana. I don't know if you can grasp that kind of. Because basically we have the right intention, we have the right aim, then our deviations from that aim don't really matter. They're not significant. They don't affect our underlying intention in practice. So we can find actually that practically speaking, we may not be moving forward on the path very much at all. But we just comfort ourselves with our high aims and ideals. So you have to make those two converge. Now, if you have the faith and the confidence in our capacity to transcend suffering, in our responsibility to do it, or as we feel that that's the only thing worth doing in life, try to make that come to bear on the mundane details of life. Getting up in the morning, going to chanting, how you chant, how you sit, how you get up again, how you walk from the meditation hall to the sala, how you get your bowl ready, how you go on bindabat, how you come back, how you get your bowl ready, what you do after you leave the sala before the meal, how you take food, how you eat food, what you do after the meal, what you do, how you do your chores, how you fill in the time between the end of the chores and the drink, how the drink, the evening meeting or the practice by yourself, all these parts of the day, reminding yourself, bringing to mind, bringing up, maintaining in consciousness this devotion to the path of the samana. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. If it's just something that you can turn to every now and again and comfort yourself, when you're letting yourself down in daily life, then that's not really good enough. So that we see that we can do this. It isn't beyond us. And the Buddha said, monks, that I'm telling you to abandon defilement and develop good qualities and purify your mind is because you can do it. Now, if you couldn't do it, the Tathagata wouldn't tell you to do it. Because you can do it, the Tathagata teaches this. And that's as true for all of us now as it was for the monks in India 2,000 years ago. So recollect this capacity, this potential that you have, and realize it. I would like to leave the evening talk at this point.